Imagine you are sleeping in a tent on a freezing cold mountain. It is pitch black outside, and the temperature is -30 degrees. You are an experienced hiker. You know that without your boots and your coat, you will freeze to death in minutes. But suddenly, something happens. Something terrifies you so much that you don't even unzip the tent door. Instead, you grab a knife and slash the tent open from the inside. You run out into the snow, barefoot, into the darkness, leaving everything you need to survive behind. This isn't a movie script. This actually happened. In 1959, 9 hikers went up a mountain in Russia, and none of them came back alive. When search teams finally found them, the scene didn't make any sense. Some bodies had strange orange skin. Some had crushed ribs but no bruises. One was missing a tongue. And their clothes were radioactive. For over 60 years, the world has asked the same question. What happened at Dyatlov Pass? Was it a secret military weapon? Was it an avalanche? Or was it something not from this world? Let's dig into one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. To understand the horror, we first have to understand the people. This wasn't a group of amateurs. The leader was Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student. He was brilliant and tough. He gathered a group of 8 friends from the Ural Polytechnic Institute. They were young, fit, and very experienced in winter hiking. They were aiming for the highest level of certification in the Soviet Union. They knew the risks and they knew how to handle the cold. There was actually a 10th hiker, Yuri, but luckily for him, he got sick with joint pain right at the start of the trip and had to turn back. He was the only survivor. He hugged his friends goodbye, not knowing he would never see them again. The group continued deeper into the Ural Mountains, heading toward a peak called Otorten. In the local indigenous language, Otorten translates roughly to "don't go there." A creepy coincidence, right? By early February, the group was supposed to send a telegram back home to say they had finished the trek. But the date came and went. No telegram. Families started to panic. Finally, rescue groups, the military, and volunteers were sent out to look for them. On February 26th, a search pilot spotted something. It was their tent. It was half collapsed and covered in snow on the slope of a mountain called Koletsayakol, or Dead Mountain. When the rescuers reached the tent, they found it empty. But it was the condition of the tent that froze their blood. It had been cut open from the inside. Inside the tent, everything was normal. Their boots were lined up. Their heavy jackets, food, and money were all still there. Why would 9 smart, experienced hikers run out into a snowstorm without their shoes? The rescuers found footprints leading down the slope toward a forest. The footprints showed that some people were wearing only socks, and some were barefoot. The group had walked calmly, they didn't run, down the mountain to their deaths. About a mile down the slope, under a large cedar tree, the searchers found the remains of a small fire. Next to it were the first 2 bodies, Doroshenko and Krivonischenko. They were stripped to their underwear. Their hands were burned, suggesting they had tried desperately to keep the fire going. Searchers then found 3 more bodies, including the leader, Igor Dyatlov. They were found between the cedar tree and the tent. It looked like they were trying to crawl back up the hill to get their supplies. They had died of hypothermia, freezing to death. It was tragic, but up to this point, it seemed like a natural accident. Maybe they got scared, ran out, and froze. But months later, the snow melted, and searchers found the last 4 hikers deep in a ravine. This is where the story turns into a nightmare. These last 4 bodies were different. They had suffered brutal, violent injuries. One hiker, Thibaut Brignoles, had a crushed skull. 2 others, Dubinina and Zolotaryov, had massive chest fractures. The force required to break their ribs like that was compared to a car crash. But here is the weird part. There were no external bruises. It was like they were crushed by high pressure from the outside. It gets worse. Ludmila Dubinina was missing her tongue and her eyes. Zolotaryov was also missing his eyes. And when scientists tested their clothes, they found traces of radiation. The Soviet government closed the case quickly. Their official explanation? The hikers died because of a compelling natural force. That's it. They sealed the files and told everyone to move on. But you can't just move on from that. So, what happened? The most scientifically accepted theory today is a specific type of avalanche called a slab avalanche. The idea is that the hikers cut into the snow to pitch their tent, which weakened the snow block above them. In the middle of the night, a heavy slab of hard snow slid down and crushed the tent. This explains why they cut their way out. They were trapped. It explains why they didn't have boots. They were sleeping. Fearing another slide, they walked down to the woods for shelter. The severe injuries found on the last 4 hikers could have happened if the heavy snow crushed them against the hard ground, or if they fell into the deep ravine later in the dark. It makes the most sense. But critics say the slope wasn't steep enough for an avalanche. And if it was an avalanche, why did they leave the tent so calmly? And what about the radiation? This leads us to the conspiracy theories. Many people believe the hikers stumbled upon a secret Soviet military test. We know the area was used for testing. Another group of hikers camping 30 miles away reported seeing strange, glowing orange spheres in the sky that night. Could a parachute mine have exploded nearby? The concussive blast would explain the internal injuries without the external bruises. It might explain why the government was so secretive and closed the case so fast. The radiation found on the clothes also points to something non-natural. Some people think the hikers were killed to keep a secret, or that a weapon test went wrong and the shockwave drove them insane with fear. And of course, we have the wilder theories. Some locals speak of the Menk, which is the Russian version of the Yeti or Bigfoot. They say a creature chased the hikers from the tent. This would explain the panic and the crushed ribs. There was even a photo on one of the hikers' cameras that some say shows a dark figure, though it's blurry and probably just a person. Others point to the orange spheres and suggest UFOs or aliens. The lack of footprints from anyone other than the hikers makes people think the attack came from the sky or an invisible force. Recently, modern science used computer simulations, the same code used for the movie Frozen, to prove that a slab avalanche was possible. It is the most logical answer. They were experienced, but nature is unpredictable. A small slip of snow, a moment of panic in the dark, and a tragic fall into a rocky ravine. But for many, the avalanche theory feels too simple. It doesn't explain the missing tongue, the odd skin color, or the sheer weirdness of the scene. It doesn't explain the fear that made 9 brave people run barefoot into the snow. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains a haunting reminder of how fragile we are. 9 young people, full of life, walked into the mountains and vanished into history. Whether it was nature, the military, or something else, we may never know the full truth. What do you think happened on that mountain? Was it just a tragic accident, or was someone or something else there that night? Let me know your theory in the comments below. And if you want more mysteries like this, hit that subscribe button. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.